Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of 2AR Snow Roundup News. My name is Richard Espinoza and I am your host. We are your primary source for Second Amendment news. We keep you informed whether it's good, bad, or ugly, whether it's a important legislation bill will benefit your Second Amendment rights or causing harm your Second Amendment rights, from blue states to red states. We give you the inside scoop and important news that matters to you in protecting your Second Amendment rights. Well, today I'm going to be talking about the 20-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Last Saturday, on August 23rd, was the official 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And there's a lot that we have learned from the incident that happened in Louisiana 20 years ago. Unfortunately, 20 years ago, many law-abiding citizens in the state of Louisiana were getting their guns illegally confiscated. It was like the redcoats coming back again. And a lot had to do with their corrupt mayor, then former mayor and convicted felon, Ray Nagin. Ray Nagin ordered an unlawful, illegal, unconstitutional gun confiscation. And unfortunately, many law enforcement officers that day violated their oath. They violated the trust of the people. But before I say any more, let me say, first of all, I want to say to all the brave men and women of law enforcement, I just want you to know you have my deepest respect, and I truly do respect law enforcement officers. But just like anything in this world, there is good and bad in everyone. There's good doctors, there's bad doctors, there's good lawyers, bad lawyers, there's good police officers and bad police officers. So, there's good and bad in everything. But unfortunately, 20 years ago, many of our trust in law enforcement 20 years ago in Louisiana, they violated the trust of the people by failing to uphold their constitutional duty in protecting the constitutional rights of American citizens. And we all know that our law enforcement officers, not only are they officers of the law, but they are also our sworn guardians of the Constitution. Every law enforcement officer has an obligation to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Every law enforcement officer raised their right hand and swore they will defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Unfortunately, there was a bit of failure 20 years ago when these law enforcement officers who raised their right hand and they failed to uphold their constitutional duty. We all know that lying under oath is the same thing as lying to God. And if you believe in God like I do, you would understand that lying under oath is the same thing as lying to God. These law enforcement officers who are supposed to be our constitutional guardians, they lied under oath by violating the trust of the people when they say that they will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. 20 years ago, they did not. And it's very sad that we put our trust into our law enforcement officers who are supposed to be our constitutional guardians. But that day in Hurricane Katrina, they became a failure and just completely ignored the Constitution. However, I will say, though, that there were law enforcement officers in Hurricane Katrina that day who actually been fired because they failed to take orders from their superiors because they did not want to violate their oath. They'd much rather be fired than violate their oath. And some of those officers who were fired later got their jobs back. They sued the state of Louisiana as well as Mayor Nagin because they forced him to enforce a law that was unconstitutional. And what the law enforcement agencies did that day on Hurricane Katrina 20 years ago was a total disgrace. They illegally confiscated people's firearms, leaving them helpless and defenseless. Because, you know, when you're dealing with a natural disaster like you do in Louisiana, or a hurricane or what have you, you're vulnerable to looters. And you have a lot of people who break into people's houses stealing their items, and they have no weapons to protect themselves because, unfortunately, the mayor of New Orleans at the time, Ray Deegan, thought he was doing the people a favor by protecting the public by taking their guns away, and it does more harm than good. But it's also a reminder to us that when we don't get involved in the processing system, you too can repeat history again. If you don't stay alert or stay aware of what's going on. And because of what happened 20 years ago, it's a lesson for us to understand that we're our own worst enemy when we don't stand up for our constitutional rights, and when we don't raise hell to our elected officials. You know, you need to call your elected officials on the phone, and if there is a unconstitutional law that's unjust, that will affect your Second Amendment rights, that's why you need to call your congressman and call your senator. Because if you don't, then you're just allowing people to get away with murder. And that is why we have corrupt politicians, because people are not getting involved in the process, and people are not paying attention to what's going on. Now, me personally, I don't like politics. Who doesn't? I hate it. But I know it's my only survival tool to get involved when it comes to protecting my Second Amendment rights. And so you got to get involved and know what goes on. And that is why I myself, you know, sending the message to everybody, because I do care about my Second Amendment rights, and I want these Second Amendment rights to continue on to many generations to come. And it's up to you, the American people, to make that happen. So what you need to understand again is that we are our own worst enemy when we allow them to do whatever they want and whenever they want. And so it is important that you stay alert. That is why we are having the problems we are today. But the good news is that the American people today are fighting back. Large thanks to Gun Owners of America, to Eric Pratt, the fearless warrior for Gun Owners of America. He has been kicking butt lately, both him and his staff at Gun Owners of America, as well as the NRA, which is making some improvements under the leadership of Doug Hamlin, and of course the National Association for Gun Rights, which is led by Dudley Brown, and of course Alan Godwin, who is the founder of the Second Amendment Foundation, and also the Citizens United to Keep and Bear Arms, and the Firearm Policy. The list goes on. The California Rifle Pistol Association, as well as Gun Owners of California, and the Virginia Defense League. They're all stepping up in trying to bring that all 50 states must respect our concealed carry permits. Though technically I believe we shouldn't even have to have a concealed carry permits, because our Second Amendment is our concealed carry permit. It is a constitutional right, and the Constitution clearly states that you do not put an infringement on a constitutional right. You don't charge a fee. You don't have to have a permission slip. A constitutional right is a constitutional right. It's a free right. And if we are forced to register our guns or forced to carry a carry permit, it defeats the purpose of us being the United States of America. It defeats the purpose of us being a free republic. That's why it matters. That is why you need to fight every step of the way when our elected officials are not doing their job and they're selling out to the gun control crowd. Now, our founding fathers warned us a long time ago that what was they knew what in the future back then, that what would happen in the future would happen today. Because if you listen to what James Madison said, if you listen to his speech about once a freedom is lost, it's lost forever. Basically, President James Madison warned us that as long as the United States of America exists, as long as our constitutional republic, and you hear me correctly, our constitutional republic, not our democracy, but a constitutional republic. When our constitutional republic is present, it's in present danger against foreign enemies. As long as we exist, as long as the republic exists, there are other countries that are going to try and challenge our integrity. And of course, you're going to have Benedict Arnolds within Washington, D.C., who are going to try to pull a fast one on over you, thinking that you're not strong enough to fight for your rights, but prove them wrong by calling them up and voting them out. That's what you got to do. Because if we do not, we are bound to have another Hurricane Katrina, where you have politicians taking advantage of you and trying to violate your Second Amendment rights. 20 years later, some people have not learned their lesson from Hurricane Katrina. And for those of you who live in states that are in hurricane territory or tornado territory, or any type of natural disaster that your state might be affected towards, you got to call up your elected officials and get some type of protection on your weapons and get a law passed on protecting your Second Amendment rights. Perhaps there should be a law called the No Compensation Act, for example. Not that it exists, but you can help create the No Compensation Act. That means under a crisis, under a disaster, people have a right to carry their weapons with them even in time of crisis. It would be against the law, and it'd be a violation of the Constitution if our law enforcement officers confiscated our weapons during a midlife crisis. God forbid. And we all saw how FEMA was treating people in North Carolina when they were struggling to get food and water. It goes to show you that we cannot depend on the government. We have to depend on ourselves. And that's why the Founding Fathers made us a self-reliant nation. It's up to us to be self-reliant. It's up to us to take care of ourselves. We cannot depend on the government to do everything. Unfortunately, you got these spoiled liberal brats who think that the government is the answer to everything, and they're not. And we all know that FEMA cannot be trusted. But what you can do is prepare yourselves. One, try to prep yourselves, stock water, food, or what have you, whatever you need that will help you survive. I strongly suggest you go to follow my good friend Stooch000 Don Porter, who does Sensible Survival. You can find many of his Sensible Survival videos on YouTube, as well as Rumble, and he always has great survival tips and important things that you're going to need during a midlife crisis. So it's important with the seasons, with the fire season, the dust season, the hurricane season. Now's the time to make sure that your elected officials are on alert and let them know that they need to protect your Second Amendment rights without getting your weapons illegally confiscated. And a lot of people thought it would never happen in America. Well, guess what? 20 years ago it happened. The closest thing to another British takeover was 20 years ago during Hurricane Katrina. That's the closest thing to it. But it's up to you. What are you going to do? Are you just going to sit there, scream, yell? What are you going to do? Let your voice be your weapon. That's why you have a right to call your congressman, your U.S. senator, or any of your elected officials and tell them where you stand. Tell them what your concerns about. Tell them that, in the future, if my state faces a disaster, I'm afraid that our law enforcement officers are going to illegally confiscate our firearms and violate the Constitution. So something needs to be done. That is, you can make a difference. And if you watch Jarrett from Guns and Gadgets, he's made a lot of differences. He has been a true crusader in fighting for our Second Amendment rights, as well as John Crump and Liberty Dahl, and of course Mark W. Smith. And I also recommend, the armed attorneys. They're other great knowledgeable people. There's a lot of great members of the Second Amendment community. But after watching all the videos recently, I decided to do something different. I didn't see anybody from the Second Amendment community talk about the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. But Hurricane Katrina should never be forgotten. We have to remember what happened 20 years ago. And to this day, there are people from New Orleans who are affected by Hurricane Katrina. They still, to this day, haven't got their guns back. Some of them got their guns back. Some of them did not. And for that matter, they did not get repaid money for their guns. So this will happen if you're not prepared. And this is what happens when you don't do nothing about it and you allow your elected officials to get away with anything they want. You got the power. Some people don't realize how powerful they can be. Your voice is your weapon. That's why the Founding Fathers granted us a First Amendment and a Second Amendment. A First Amendment to voice your opinion and, most importantly, send a message to your elected officials because they're your employer. You're the boss. And it's up to you to tell them what to do because you're the taxpayer. And the Second Amendment is the last resort, which is used to protect our rights and our republic against a corrupt takeover. Well, that is it for today for 2A Arsenal Roundup News. If you have any important Second Amendment news that you want to keep me informed on, you want me to report, please feel free to send me an email at rjespinoza, that's ESPINOZA, roundupnews@gmail.com. Tell me what state you're from. Tell me what the legislation is about. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? Will it benefit your Second Amendment rights or will it affect your Second Amendment rights? Just send me the email, let me know, and I will look into it and hopefully bring it to light in my next broadcast. Until then, be armed, be vigilant, stay safe, carry your firearm to protect your family, your home, and community, because that's why we have a Second Amendment. Take care.